Hello. This week's Torah portion, Ha-Berachah, is the 54th and last portion in the Torah, and also the shortest. It contains no commandments, and is the only one that is not read on Shabbat. It is read rather on Simchat Torah to conclude the annual reading cycle, and is immediately followed by a few verses from Bereshit, the first portion, to symbolize the fact that there is no break in our study of Torah. In it, the death of Moses is recorded, followed by the words, "And no other prophet ever arose in Israel like Moses, whom God knew face to face." Unquote. This simple statement is, in fact, one of Maimonides' 13 principles of the Jewish faith, the 7th to be precise. Let us pause to explore these 13 principles and trace their effect on Judaism. Maimonides, known as the Rambam, lived in 12th century Egypt. He had a rational, analytical mind, and so felt the need to champion a creed for Judaism, as other religions did. In his commentary on the Talmud, he introduced the following 13 principles of faith, Ikarim in Hebrew. God exists and created everything. God is one. God has no body. God is eternal. God alone should be worshipped. God revealed himself through the prophets. Moses was the greatest prophet. The Torah we have today is the very same one God gave us on Mount Sinai. The Torah will never change. God knows all our actions. God rewards good and punishes evil. The Messiah will come, and the dead will be resurrected. The first 5 lay the groundwork. There is a single God who created everything, has no body, and is eternal, and nothing else must be worshipped. The 6th reminds us to listen to his prophet who gave us necessary warnings at appropriate times. The 7th, in our portion, is that Moses was the greatest prophet. Why was there a need to make that a separate principle? The Rambam sees 4 reasons. First, God did not speak to the other prophets face to face. Second, God spoke to them in their sleep or when they were in a trance, not in broad daylight. Third, when God would speak to them, they would lose their faculties because of the intense experience. Fourth, they could not communicate with God whenever they wanted to. None of these obstacles applied to Moses. His legacy, accepting the revelation of the written and oral laws and explaining them to the people, was orders of magnitude above that of the other prophets, and deserves separate mention. The 8th principle, that the Torah we have today is the same as the Torah God gave us on Mount Sinai, is necessary to prevent people from claiming, "I'm sure an error in transmission has crept in because this passage doesn't make any sense, or contradicts this other passage," etc. Once such claims are entertained, the entire Torah becomes suspicious and loses its authority. The 9th principle, that the Torah will never change and no updates to it are to be expected, is necessary to reject the claims of later religion who said, yes, the Torah is holy and everything in it is true, but God has given us his latest updates through Jesus, Muhammad, or some other latter-day religious leader. This principle guards against this form of corruption. The last 4 principles are necessary to remind us that God did not abandon us after having given us his laws, but keeps watch over us constantly, takes appropriate action, and keeps our hopes up. They are that God knows all our actions, rewards good and evil, and punishes evil, will send a Messiah, and will resurrect the dead. These 13 principles were controversial when proposed. Luminaries such as Hasdai Kreskas and Yosef Albo asked, is the rest of Judaism any less important? No one argued whether these principles are at the core of Judaism. They are. But many were uncomfortable with the idea of a formal creed that would separate real Jews from heretics, and could be used as a litmus test to determine who is a good Jew. More importantly, Judaism stresses action, that is, commandments, not belief. Belief is not central or even particularly required in Judaism. Your thoughts are your own, and you are not accountable for them. So, disagreement with the Rambam was not on whether his principles are correct, but on whether their rejection brands one a heretic, which has serious implications in Jewish law. So Jews ignored the 13 principles for many centuries. However, many traditional Jews today insist on reciting them regularly. The popular Orthodox Siddur, the Art Scroll, introduced in 1984, writes, quote, "Historically, Judaism never separated belief from performance. However, philosophical speculation and dogmas of faith became prevalent among other religions and in time began to influence a number of Jews. To counteract this trend, medieval rabbinic authorities felt the need to define the principle of Judaism. The Rambam's version has achieved virtually universal acceptance. It is commendable to recite these principles every day after Shacharit." Unquote. The Siddur reflects this compromise. The 13 principles are included not as a central canonical prayer, but in poetic form. First, the Yigdal, a poem written by Daniel ben Yehuda in 1404, is recited at the beginning of morning prayers and frequently sung at the end of formal services. In Egypt, where I grew up, the Yigdal was sung at the end of every service, perhaps because Egypt is where the Rambam lived. Second, Ani Ma'amin is read following morning services among some Ashkenazim. It recalls the 12th principle, the one about the coming of the Messiah. Ani Ma'amin be'emunah shelema beviat HaMashiach ve'af al pi sheyit mahmeha im kol ze achake lo bechol yom sheyavo. I believe with perfect faith in the coming of the Messiah, and even though he may delay, I await him every day, with all that, certain that he will come. A popular tune for it was composed by Reb Azriel David, a Motzitzer Hasid, on the way to Treblinka, the Nazi extermination camp. To gain acceptance, the Rambam does not shy from issuing veiled threats. He writes, quote, "When a man believes all of these principles, then he enters into the community of Israel. Even if he sins greatly, he is punished according to his sins, but he still has a share in the world to come, and he is considered a sinning Jew. But if a man rejects even one of these principles, then he has left the nation and is called a heretic." Unquote. However, there is no such thing as a Jew being expelled from Judaism. The Talmud lays down the principle that a Jew remains a Jew, no matter what he does. Quote, Rabbi Abba ben Zabda said, "Even though the people have sins, they are still Israel." Unquote. The Midrash even says that God himself does not hold belief to be essential. Quote, Rabbi Huna and Rabbi Jeremiah said in the name of Rabbi Hiya ben Abba, "It is written in the book of Jeremiah, they have forsaken me and have not kept my law." This means that God said, "I wish they had forsaken me but still kept my law, because by occupying themselves with it, the light which it contains would have led them back to the right path." Unquote. In conclusion, Judaism should be viewed as a package deal. I elaborated on this in another Devar Torah. As the Mishnah says, quote, "Be as scrupulous in observing a minor commandment as a major commandment, because you do not know the value of each commandment." Unquote. Leshana Tova. May you have a good year.